Here's another tip for how to get optimum performance out of your system over many years. Like I've had this 4790K GTX 970 system for over 6 years now. And yes, I am getting a new computer. But the reason for this video is to give you some pointers to get the maximum life out of your systems. The main thing is that I have had this system overclocked, the CPU and the GPU, but CPU more importantly, for 6 years by 200 megahertz above the stock boost clock, which is 4400 megahertz, and I've had it running at 5600 megahertz stable for 6 years. However, 6 months ago it started giving increasing problems where I would come overnight and it rebooted itself or turned itself off. Initially I thought it was to do with Windows update, but it wasn't, and it's increasingly become less and less stable, crashing, blue screens. It was basically because the CPU has degraded over time. This is despite the fact that I've not let the CPU get hot. Even under max load it would not go over 70 degrees with full fans running. It would top out at something like 68 degrees, and it's currently at 80%. Let's see what the current temperature. Well, that needs updating. See, just 40 degrees, running at max 4.5 gigahertz. I don't know if it's on all cores. We can look here, performance, CPU. Yeah, it is all cores. So it's around 4.5 gigahertz all cores, and the temperature is, yeah, that's more like it, 56 degrees, 55 degrees. And on this tool it would previously max out at 68 degrees. So by reducing the overclock by 100 megahertz, it's basically dropped about 10 degrees, 8 degrees, something like that, off the max temperatures. But that's enough to make the system stable now, which it has been for a month. So basically what I'm saying is, if your system has been stable for a while and suddenly it becomes unstable, then do check your temperatures, because it's probably the silicon's degraded in the CPU over time due to high temperatures, which is the killer of components. The reason this system is over 6 years old, still running fine, 3 screens of a GTX 970, is because I watch the temps. I don't want the GPU temperature to go over 70 degrees, and I don't want the CPU temperature to go over 70 degrees. However, now even that is not good enough for it, because it is old. It's been under constant use, near daily use. In fact, I just leave the system on overnight, I just leave it on, and usually there's no problem. Obviously you're going to have to reboot it about once every 2 to 3 weeks, because Windows picks up a lot of crap and that degrades performance. But the CPUs and other components do degrade over time, and if you want to get the longest time out of your system, then you're gonna have to keep aware of the temperature. I'm not saying don't overclock, do overclock to maximize efficiency, but don't do these stupid overclocks where you see people running their GPUs and CPUs at over 80 degrees, even 90 degrees. That is definitely going to shorten the life of your CPUs. Okay, if you're going to upgrade once every 2 years, then you might get away with it. But anything longer than that, it's going to give you errors, become less stable. So my advice is, keep the CPU and GPU temperatures below 70 degrees under load. If your system requires, you're chancing it. I know a lot of people are going to say, wow, that's 70, that's too low. If you want your system to last years like this one, that's what you got to do. Now this system, like, it has to be below basically 60 degrees to be stable under load. It's not under max load, 76, 80%. It could probably creep up to 62 degrees under full load, but it's had to be clocked down to times 45 and 46 where it ran for years. Similarly, the GPU is overclocked, as you can see. Overclock power and memory, but not a lot. That's so as to ensure under load, you know, it doesn't go over 70, or if it does, not above 75. Although I don't really see it. Mostly it's between, say, 35 and 55 where it is now. Even though I'm running 3 screens, 1440p HD and 1440p. So, you know, the GTX 970 is under load, 3 screens permanently. So this is a pointer if you want to maximize the life of your CPU and GPU. Yes, overclock it if you've got the cooling, but watch the temperatures if you want it to last more than a couple of years. If you're not bothered, then yeah, let it go over 80 degrees. But if it goes over 90 degrees, it's probably not even going to last a year before you start getting issues with it rebooting and stuff like that. It's one of the problems with buying second-hand GPUs. You don't know how they've ran it, how they've operated, how much life there's left in it. But if someone's looked after it and basically kept it below, say, consistently, not let it go over 70 degrees, that GPU is going to have a lot of life left in it. Whereas if they've played game on full settings and let it typically stay above 80 degrees, 85, 86, maybe even touch 90, then that GPU is not going to have much life left after a couple of years. You know, a couple of years it's done. Same with the crypto miners. Although with crypto miners, they tend to overclock memory and less so core, so that it consumes less power. So they're trying to, but then, you know, the GPU core might be fine, but the memory is screwed. They've overclocked the memory too much, you know, burnt it out. That's what shortened the GPU's life with the miners, is it's the state of the memory. That's the problem with buying second-hand components. You don't know how they've looked after it. Like I've looked after this because I've been away for a long time. The key killer of a system is temperature. If you want it to last long, watch the temperatures. And now after 6 years I've had to clock it down to 45 just to make it stable. I estimate this system has got easily, you know, CPU easily another, it's got plenty of life left in it. Because look, it might be a year, I guess, but then I just clock it back to stock. Yeah, 44. So it could probably go for, I don't see why it couldn't continue for another 3 years. So that would give me nearly 10 years. Obviously I'm getting a new system now from Scan Computers, a RTX 3080 5950X 64GB RAM monster, which will hopefully last me at least 5 years, especially since I know how to look after it in terms of temps. So it'd be interesting to see what the temps are of the new system when it comes. You know, if under normal usage it's, you know, under 50 degrees, which it should be, with 3 screens attached, I'm expecting it to be under, the CPU and GPU to be under 50 degrees. I'd be surprised if they're over, and we'll probably have to underclock if they are. That's, you know, normal usage. Well, CPU 90%, I don't think that will be. Well, if it comes in at 56 degrees, the 5950X, I'll be happy. Yeah, because it is a 16 core although it is going to be water cooled. Anyway, we'll see when it arrives, hopefully within a couple of weeks. So this is just a heads up for all you out there of how to make sure that your system has a long life, stable life, and it's to do with temperatures. Try to keep CPU and GPU below 70 degrees when they're under load. Try to do that with your settings, with your voltage settings, overclock memory and core clocks. Sure, when it's under load that it's under 70. I know it's going to be tempting to get the maximum out of them, but unless you've got the cooling, you're going to shorten its life. Basically, the higher the temps, the shorter the life of your components. Especially if it's over 80 degrees, you don't want really 90 degrees. Some crazy fools run their systems at 90 degrees. They're going to be lucky to get 1 year out of those components. So basically, over 90, you're going to have about a 1 year life on that component that's typically running over 90 under load. Over 80, I'd say you're going to get 2 years, 2.5 years. 70 to 80, typical under load, you're probably going to get 3 years, 3 to 4 years. And if you're under 70 under load, you're probably going to get 5 to 6 years, depending how often it's under load. As long as it's under 70, that's what you can expect in terms of life, depending on your temps.